All right, welcome to a weekend edition of the Hardwood Huddle. I am Randy Zellea, and with me is the Supreme Leader. He is the Jedi Knight. He is the one and only, coming from the darkness into the light, Mr. Bill Ingram himself. Bill, good morning. How are we doing? We're taping. We finally got on the schedule. We can tape together. Hallelujah, right?
We did. It's a little bit like the NBA teams trying to figure out how they're going to fit this new weird schedule in to get everybody playing the right number of games in the right number of places with the right amount of social distancing. And
Yeah.
even going to play in Toronto. What a crazy world we live in.
Well, Toronto, the Raptors contacted me about playing in my backyard, and I said, listen, I'm not interested.
They just tear it up, man. When they did that here, I'm still trying to get the damage repaired.
Yeah. I literally had that mental picture of me coming down the stairs, and there's Kyle Lowry at my island sitting there having cereal. So with that, and his kids running around the whole entire time. But look, at the end of the day, the NBA offseason, the shortened, abbreviated offseason is in full effect right now. And my Lord, everything except for the two big shoes to drop that we were waiting for seems to be happening in different ways. Steven Adams moved this week, which you and I both said, who doesn't want him on their team?
I'll take him.
So, man, I don't know where to start. So, but let's backtrack and let's start right before the NBA draft. The news about James Harden and Russell Westbrook both wanting out, both put on their Christmas list the destinations of where they would like to be by Christmas. And the Rockets are sitting there saying, thank you for putting this in the suggestion box. We'll look over it. We'll get back to you. Please get back on the court and do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, shut up and play basketball.
yeah, and
there's a lack of understanding on the part of the players. I think that, especially guys making the kind of money that James Harden and Russell Westbrook make, that it takes a hell of a lot for a team to acquire them. And for, let's take Harden, for example, to say, hey, yep, just send me to Brooklyn. Well, the problem is they've already got, and here's my favorite thing, and I forget who had this analysis of it, but it was that, well, by going to Brooklyn, James Harden will have some of the scoring burden taken off his shoulders because Kevin Durant can shoulder some of that. And I thought, there's only one burden on James Harden's shoulders, and that's the fact that he won't pass the damn ball.
Yeah.
There are plenty of weapons that have been in his on the court with him in Houston and in Oklahoma City before that, who would have happily shared the burden of the ball if he would have let them.
Yeah.
I wondered, do you really think that through? And what, Brooklyn says, we'll give up the bench for James Harden, and Houston's supposed to take that? Like, oh, come on.
Yeah. So, yeah, Brooklyn's attitude was like, listen, I see you have James Harden there. We would like to offer you this, a shiny can of Coca-Cola.
Right.
What do you think? No.
Oh,
I think, and not that I want to promote other sportscasters on the show, but Colin Cowherd said it best. James Harden is a scorer. He is not a leader. He can score you 35 points a game while giving up 25 points.
Yep.
Chris Paul came and left him. He still won. Dwight Howard sort of came and left him. He just won a championship ring. I hate to say it, a leader he is not. And Kevin Durant's toughness and wanting the ball in the clutches has been questioned even when he was in Golden State. So if James Harden and Kyrie Irving are teaming with Kevin Durant, you have Harden sitting there saying, because Harden has disappeared in big spots, you take the ball. No, you take the ball. And then Kyrie will be like, well, I'll take the ball. Well, we don't want you to have the ball. That's pretty much what it's looking like there. And it's like, oh, man, if I were the Brooklyn Nets, I would say, listen, we're not interested in Harden, but we would like Serge Ibaka.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I'd rather have Spencer Dinwiddie, honestly, than James Harden at this point, because you're not having to pay him $50 million, and he'll pass the ball. He's a capable and willing distributor who I just thought, he really had a great season and looks like a player who's really going to be on the rise. If I'm moving somebody, I move Kyrie because I'd rather have the ball in Dinwiddie's hands. But I don't necessarily agree with your assessment of KD, though. I think he showed in Golden State and Finals MVP that he will. And in Oklahoma City, he took the big shot night after night. And they used to battle hard with Dallas, and of course I was courtside in both places usually, watching that. And KD would take the big shot at the end and make it, and not a moment's hesitation. And hell, the Mavs knew. They knew he was going to take the shot. Rick Carlisle said this multiple times. We know who's taking the shot. We know where he's going to take the shot. We just can't stop him from doing it. So does he come back with that same ability post-injury, these horrible injuries where they miss a season? That it takes a toll on the game more often than not, but we're hearing that KD looks like the KD before the injury. And I'll build a team around that guy, his ability. It's his mentality, his tendency to worry too much about what other people think. That's the only thing the only hole in his game to me. And it's his off the court game. It's that mental toughness. But on the court, I'll take KD any day. In last second shot, any day. I'll take him.
I think I have to agree with you and take the L on that previous comment that I made. He does care way too much about what everybody else is thinking. And I think LeBron was the same way until he went back to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I think when he went back to Cleveland, he just said, listen, I'm going to have my detractors no matter what. You guys are going to say what you want about me. I'm just going to go do my thing. And I think that's what has made his LA run so much more fascinating, is he just doesn't care. He just wants to win. There was a lot of criticism for him not staying in Cleveland and going back to the Lakers, especially when he said he wanted to finish his career in Cleveland. But he fulfilled his prophecy out in Cleveland and got them a championship. Should have been more. He probably should have beaten, if Kyrie and Kevin Love didn't go down, that first Warriors-Cavs matchup probably should have belonged to the Cavs, to be honest with you. But you have to look at it from the perspective of you have to play with the guys that you have. And LeBron surrounds himself. And I was having this argument with somebody who used to be on NBA Sirius Radio, Nabate Illis, yesterday. We had him on the show for Off Topic. And we were discussing the LeBron-Jordan debate. I know we're totally getting off from the NBA offseason right now, and I apologize for that. This is what I do.
Jordan debate.
But it's one of those things where LeBron is smart to team up. And he's saying that because it's helping his longevity. But I made the comment, I said, look, but Jordan back in the day didn't want to just beat you. He ain't teaming with you. He's beating you. He's sticking with his guys. That first three-peat, that core stayed together until Jordan was gone. That second three-peat, you pretty much had the same nucleus of guys with him throughout that run. So Jordan was a guy who just wanted to beat you. Mm-hmm. LeBron, I don't see that fire, and I told him it's not fair to compare it. I think the accolades can probably go hand in hand, but the actual player himself is not. It's not a competition.
It's absolutely right. It's a different game.
It's also a different game.
A different league where everybody wants to play with each other all the time. In the 80s and 90s, no way did anybody. They all wanted to beat you. Everybody wanted to have their own team with their own guys and beat your team with your guys. And nobody wanted to play with each other. And I thoroughly enjoyed all those rivalries. I mean, man, it made the game so much more interesting to me. But, hey, the players are a result of the culture in which they play and the times in which they play. And these are times where who plays an entire career? I mean, Dirk, I don't know that we'll see another player play his entire career, a long-term superstar type player that plays 20 years. How many guys are really going to spend all that time on the same team now with all the free agency and all the movement and all that stuff? I just don't know. Dirk, I think, will be – I don't want to say he'll be the last. Somebody will do it. But that used to be the norm, and now you're just not going to see it very often.
I think someone who's been a senior in college coming out into the NBA will do it because they're coming out more mature and understand that this is the job part of it, whereas – you have these kids who are coming out one and done. It's the excitement of everything and the immaturity, and they sort of run themselves out of town, or they make the team run them out of town. So I think there's a level of that. So that was the big thing with Harden during the beginning of the week, and of course Westbrook too. They're fielding offers.
They don't want to play with each other. That's it. People don't play with James Harden for very long.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what it is there. Then we had the draft where there wasn't really many surprises. I think it was more about the trade, and this was the definition of a potential draft. If we've ever had a potential draft in the NBA, this was the definition of it because it was all unknown. And it really was just all unknowns. The Drew Holiday trade expanded into Steven Adams last night, where Steve Adams is going to end up in a Pelicans uniform, which is a steal by Dave Griffin.
No doubt.
So we're looking at, and I think we have a week before camp kicks in. I think we're going to see some moves. I don't think Houston's going to move either one of those big guys. I can't see a team. I think the Pelicans are the only team that got considerably better. And I think the Pistons have done a lot of moves, but I don't know how much better they're getting with those moves.
I thought Milwaukee was a lot better until that trade with Sacramento fell through.
Yes, I agree with you.
Now it's kind of what's happening with Milwaukee. And I think, Phoenix getting Chris Paul.
No, I'm sorry, Chris Paul. I forgot about Chris Paul trade. Yeah, Phoenix has knocked themselves out of lottery contention. Have now put themselves in the talk.
Yep, and I also think we have to look at Kelly Oubre landing in Golden State. Obviously, he's not Klay Thompson by any stretch of the imagination, but he's what they need. They need a shooting guard who can score the three. He can also do some things Klay doesn't do. Not saying Klay couldn't do them, but he will do some things that Klay tends to keep his roll out, hitting that open three. So there were some teams that helped themselves. Of course, with the Warriors, it was by necessity. They would be better if Klay had not gotten injured and they didn't have Oubre. But they did, responded very well to that negative and came back with a positive.
Do you think, and this is a very, very fair question, do you think at this point in time, you look at teams like the Lakers and the Clippers and the Milwaukee Bucks, and you look at the Philadelphia 76ers who got better this week too by trading out Horford.
Yep.
You look at that. You look at these teams.
Portland got Covington.
I'm sorry?
Portland got Covington.
Yeah. That's true. You look at these teams, and I'm saying we have two giant unknowns, one from each conference. You have Golden State, because you don't know what Golden State is coming back into the Western Conference.
Yep.
And then you look in the Eastern Conference, you don't know what Brooklyn's going to be because you don't know what this is going to be. And I think the parallel between the Warriors and the Nets right now is both teams didn't have their stars last year. So both teams were forced to have their role players play major minutes and be put in different situations. So how much better are those teams going to be when they add their superstars back to the mix come December 22nd?
Well, that's always the thing. When you've got guys who were not going to play many minutes, now thrust into situations where, we never want to say wins don't matter, but they're not as critical. And they're in games, in situations, carrying a load they wouldn't have carried before. And now they're being put back into a situation where they don't have to shoulder that load, but they have and they can. That is, and I know that's what you're alluding to, is now those guys, instead of having to carry the team every night, get to complement Steph Curry. They get to complement Kevin Durant.
Yep.
And it means that your supporting cast this is how it should be. And I'm sure with Steve Kerr, this is how it will be. We'll see what happens in Brooklyn. But those guys should now be ready to take that team to the next level with the stars back. That's what should happen. All
right, let's do a quick little game of do you believe it or not? As I always like to call this. Do you believe it or not? I just do this on Off Topic all the time. I'm going to name a story, and you can just say believe it or don't believe it. And you can tell me why, and I'll chime in.
Boys, believe it
or not. All right. So first story to believe. Earlier, one source, I sent it over to you, and you said never heard of the source before, had claimed that the Nets and Rockets have an understanding of a possible deal. Do you believe it or not?
No, I don't believe it at all. Not unless, the Nets are not going to move KD. Apparently they're not going to move Kyrie. I don't know why Houston would want Kyrie. I know Popovich has expressed interest in Kyrie and a LaMarcus to Brooklyn trade. If Pop wants Kyrie for whatever reason, that would make sense. But Houston, I don't see them taking what Brooklyn has to offer, what they've offered to this point, unless they're just going to say, "Hey, we're scrapping it, we're rebuilding," and that's not what we're hearing from Houston.
Correct. Listen, this goes back to someone thinks they heard something and put a clickbait out there, and everybody sort of believed it, and then you scratch your head and saying, dude, don't you have anything better to do with your time? Like, that's pretty much the way it is. Okay.
20-year-old kids manning the Twitter feeds for websites.
Believe it or not, Dwight Howard actually turned down the opportunity to go back to the Lakers. Can you believe that or not?
I knew Dwight quite well back in the Orlando and Houston days, and I would like to think that he's matured some. He's saying the right things, which is that he's ready to get paid now because he took what he took from the Lakers because nobody else was offering anything. Now he's a champion. Now he deserves a contract. And while I understand his mentality in that, I don't know that he proved anything to the rest of the league. He was not a major factor in that championship. He was a factor. He played well in a limited role. But am I going to sign Dwight Howard to a big contract, start him at center, and base the success of my franchise on him? I'm not going to do that. He just doesn't take it seriously enough. He's never taken it seriously. He's been incredibly talented, but the first time he got hurt, I believe it was an elbow to the back from Brendan Haywood. They were playing in Orlando. Mavs were there. I was there. I remember he got hurt. And because his work ethic is not what it could be, he never really came back from that injury. And so that side of him is the side that general managers know well. And when you're talking about who you're going to make a big contract offer to, I don't think Dwight's on that list. I think he'll land somewhere. He can help a lot of teams. He could help the Lakers. He should just really, if I'm Dwight, I stay there. But big contract from some team, I don't believe that.
I sort of agree on that one. Okay, how about this one? The Nets signed Joe Harris to a 4-year, $75 million deal. Do you believe this, or is this something that's a regretful situation by the Brooklyn Nets?
I hate to see teams bet. That's a bet. That's going to Vegas, and you're spinning the roulette wheel, and you're putting it on a number, and you're hoping it's that number. And maybe it is, and maybe it's not. But it's awfully hard to put a value on a player because usually it's I love restricted free agency. That's my favorite thing. Okay, go get your contract from somebody, and then we'll either match it or not. But I don't know. I don't believe that. I don't put that kind of money. I mean, they got a lot of money to spend on that team, and that's not where I spend it.
No, not $75 million over 4 years for a guy who was a spot-up shooter 2 years ago and last year couldn't sniff the basket. I'm sorry. I just don't buy it. And
that's not what that is. Here's what I believe without knowing this, but I believe this. His agent leaked that.
No, God, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
His agent that to drive up the price and help the negotiations, which is what the media mostly that's the purpose the media seems to serve these days, is the tool of the agents or teams to drive up value or drive down value.
Believe it or not, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to own 12 of the first 14 lottery picks in next year's draft, and the other 2 are still going to go to the Boston Celtics because the Nets are still paying for the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade.
I do believe that, man. Sam Presti has been collecting. And look, when they had a great year this year, what they do? They fire their coach. They start sending players out. Wait, we're supposed to be losing. We need to clear these guys. What are you doing? We're trying to lose. And it makes sense because they're not going to compete. The West is so deep right now. If you're a team like the Thunder, you want to look at, or even I'd say the Pelicans, you're trying to look at 5 years from now, because 5 years from now, LeBron is gone, most likely. He's certainly not a superstar anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of and maybe Damian Lillard, some of the guys who are in their primes or later stages of their primes right now will be gone. You talk about Chris Paul, maybe Westbrook and Harden. A lot of these guys 5 years from now, they're not in that discussion anymore. So you're trying to build for the next round of Western Conference teams and trying to be the top in that category. And that's what Sam Presti is trying to do in Oklahoma City. And with all those first-round picks, as long as you don't have drafts like this year, you're going to be in a position to build that team. And I like that approach. I love the approach of building it from the ground up. That is my favorite way to watch a team get built and to grow. I hate the free agency shortcuts. So I'll believe that one. That's Presti's goal, and Presti is one of the most underrated GMs in the NBA.
And for those who take me seriously, the Celtics have already gotten all their draft picks from the Nets for that deal.
Oh, they were already putting it in the comments. Brandy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna get a whole bunch of hate mail later. No, we already paid that debt. By the way, that picture I sent you earlier from the draft lottery was all OKC, and there was one Knicks one. That's what made that even better.
Right, because the Knicks will still be in the lottery.
Yeah. Speaking of the Knicks, people around the area and people around the league have given them an A+ for their draft this year. The team actually feeling like they're in the right direction. Look, here's my view of the New York Knicks situation, and I say situation, and I mean it. It's a real bad situation. You were on this right path before. You got a good free agent in Amari Stoudemire. Yes, he had bad knees at that time, but you had a superstar. You signed guys like Raymond Felton. You had rookies like Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari. You had a team that the crowd was sort of getting behind because a lot of them were unknown guys. You bought Amari Stoudemire, and they had a very solid first half of the year. But that was the same time where they had the Carmelo Anthony sweepstakes between them and the Nets. And you know this because you're close with George Karl. As attractive as the Nets offer was to that team, to the Denver Nuggets, George Karl was like, may not be here 5 years from now to see how this trade is going to really turn out. So let's take the Knicks offer so we can still be competing today. And
it worked. I mean,
yeah, and the Nets offer was overall a better offer. You were getting Devin Harris, you were getting Derek Favors, and you were getting 3 first-round draft picks, as well as some other role players for Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo was just like, dude, I'm going to go to New York either way. Just make sure I get paid. So, the Nuggets ended up going with the Knicks offer. The Knicks were damned from that point on because you take away not only your future, you're mortgaging the future for right now, but you were also banking on Amari Stoudemire's knees and banking on that Carmelo and Stoudemire were going to have a good working relationship, and it wasn't there. So for the first time in a while, the Knicks have assets. For the first time in a while, they have money, they have draft picks, they have some young players, but is there a superstar that wants to come on board and play in the circus?
I don't think so. And I liken that situation. Dallas was in this situation for a while, not nearly to the extent. I mean, Dallas was in this situation and was still making the playoffs every year because of Dirk. But Dallas thought the way Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson, they thought the way to compete for a championship was to go through free agency and target the big names every summer, set yourself up with short-term contracts so that you could make these huge offers to big names, and none of them chose Dallas.
Yeah.
So you wound up with just a buffet of who was left at the end of the season. And hey, to Dirk's credit, to those players' credit, to Rick Carlisle's credit, they made the playoffs most of the time with the buffet of players. But every year, Dirk had to look around him and go, "Who are you again?"
Yeah.
And they did it because Dirk was amazing. New York has not had a Dirk in that mix. They've had the same mentality, which is let's go out and try to sign big name free agents and make trades, and that's how we're going to build our team. But Dallas is now on the rebound. They're on the, if perhaps Porzingis could actually ever get healthy and stay that way, they would be in the contending discussion because they changed course towards the end of Dirk's career. They changed course. They started using their draft picks and developing those guys, and then of course, you wind up with the Luka Doncic pick. You get him with Trae Young, that whole thing. But now Dallas is on the rise because you have a bunch of young players who have played together for several seasons, who know each other. They know each other's games. They've developed together, and they're a cohesive unit. That's really what the Knicks need to do. They need to stop bringing in every power forward in the league and worrying about every free agent, and just go, look, we're going to take all these picks and let's use the picks and let's put together a coaching staff that is a developmental staff that knows how to take young players and mold them into great players. and then build the franchise like that. And then the fan base will get behind you because they'll see what you're doing. They'll get to know those guys. They'll see their growth game over game and month over month and season over season, and the fan base will believe in the team again.
Well, and you say that too, and I really think about A, growing the team, and B, developing your own stars instead of trying to pick out other places. As we're winding down here, has there been any team that has improved themselves since the last trade deadline to now look and has a better upside to make the playoffs this year in the Eastern Conference than the Atlanta Hawks?
Not better than it. To make the playoffs, certainly not. Absolutely not. That part of the Eastern Conference, there have been some interesting things happening in the middle and the top. If the Oladipo situation is interesting. What's going to happen in Indiana? Because he can't be the star of that team if they're going to be serious. Now, Indiana's, I don't think they're serious, but Atlanta, they've got a front office that desperately wants to win. They've got a player who might be Trae Young, might be the guy with the right, one or two more pieces around him. I love the Clint Capella. I loved that pickup because Clint Capella will do all the dirty. I couldn't believe Houston. Well, anyway, that's the Rockets. That was a great pickup for them. They've got size, they've got speed, they've got quickness. All they really lack is experience and another little tweak. And the Hawks I'll be shocked if they don't. It'll take a major injury for them to not make the playoffs this year. And then I'll be surprised if 2 and 3 years from now, they're not in that home court advantage bracket.
I think also a lot of these offseason moves and different things that they're doing, I think it's compelling to see where the team was last year. And you wondered last year, like, man, how is it not working? But now I think they have the right veterans in there. Nothing against Vince Carter. I think Vince honestly should have ended up into the team that we're going to transition to next. I think he should have ended up in Toronto. Look, Toronto is a team that now is transitioning a year after they won their championship. The Lakers are the new champion. The core the remaining parts, it was almost like the Raptors without Kawhi this year what the Cavaliers should have been without LeBron. I thought that they
Yep.
I thought that the team should have been Cleveland should have been better at that point, but now Toronto has some decisions. Do you want to keep some of these core pieces of your championship squad together, or is it time to if you're yours, you just press reset now and say, you know what, Kyle, we're going to go through the rebuild. Let's do best by you and try and move you. Fred, go get your contract. Serge, go get your contract. Mark, go get your contract. Because right now you're bringing back pieces, but nothing to build around. So, that's my view of the Raptors situation. I don't think this is a reboot, or reload. It's time for a reboot and rebuild the whole thing. And I don't think you can build it around Kyle Lowry.
I don't know if you can build it around Kyle, but you can build it around Siakam, I believe. When they let when they let Kawhi go, the mentality was, well, Siakam's ready. And I thought, shit, you guys are nuts. But he proved me wrong, certainly during the regular season, not as much during the bubble. But when you have I think that disruption in play, we saw a lot of teams really not come into the bubble. Milwaukee's the perfect example. Came into the bubble not ready, they lost the cohesiveness of the regular season before the shutdown, and they just didn't come to the bubble the same way. Some teams were much better, like Phoenix, but some teams just didn't work well, all that break time off. I think they have Kyle Lowry had just an incredible season. And Siakam had a great season, and they've still got – there's a guy where if Marc Gasol, I don't know how much he has left or if he's going to stay there, but Dwight Howard could help that situation. That's the kind of situation where they wouldn't expect a whole lot from him, but he could fill the role, right? So I think Toronto is still just a tweak or even you never want to stand pat, but if you keep Van Fleet and and Kyle still, granted, he's one of those guys that's towards the end of his prime, but we're talking about a team that was really, really good last year. And if you could have one little injection of youth or one free agent, I think they're that away from maybe winning the East, where when you talk about blowing it up and rebuilding, I don't see that for a team that was as good as the Raptors were.
Fair deal. Guys, you can follow the Hardwood Huddle at backsportspage.com. We're on Bill's on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. Bill, let's do the plugs and let's get out of here to enjoy our Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me on Twitter at the Rocket Guy. When I write about the NBA, that's of course at backsportspage.com. My personal blog is ishmaelslegacy.com. So you can follow my other writing there. And I always put that out on Twitter and Facebook. So, and then of course in the chair here with Randy once a week for the latest of what's going on in the NBA, or sometimes we have friends from the league in to talk, and it's always fun.
I appreciate it. I got to send you an email that I just got from the 76ers, so I got to remember to do that today. And we'll go from there. We'll catch everybody next week. Thanks for coming inside the huddle. For Bill Ingram, I'm Randy Zellea. See you next week.
Thanksgiving. Stay safe.
You got it.